You are listening to In a Minute on Second Chance Ministry Radio.
Welcome to In a Minute. I'm Robin High School, and we're continuing to read through the New Testament book of Matthew, one chapter a day, 5 days a week. But first, let's just take a couple of minutes to discuss today's chapter. A lot happens in Matthew chapter 4. Jesus is tested in the wilderness. John the Baptist is arrested. Jesus begins his ministry in Galilee, and he recruits his first 4 disciples. So let's start with the wilderness. After a 40-day fast in the wilderness, Satan comes and tempts Jesus. Jesus has all power at his disposal, but how will he use it? First, Satan tries to get Jesus to do a miracle outside of God's will. Then Satan tries to get Jesus to gain influence and public attention through a spectacle rather than a righteous life of obedience and through God's message. Finally, Satan tempts Jesus to basically get a crown by skipping the cross. Jesus resisted these temptations by using Scripture consistently and in a purposeful way. And this is a model for all of us to show us how to deal with spiritual warfare. So Jesus emerges from his 40 days in the wilderness, and he gets news that John the Baptist has been arrested, not for doing anything wrong, but because he had confronted the powers that be with the truth. Jesus then travels north to the north end of the Sea of Galilee, and he sets up a home base in Capernaum. Twice in the book of Matthew, we read the statement, "From that time, Jesus began." And each time it marks a crucial direction in Jesus' earthly timeline. Here, it signals the beginning of Jesus' public ministry. From the Gospel of Luke, we know that Jesus is 30 years old at this time. He recruits the first 4 of 12 disciples, 2 sets of brothers, Peter and Andrew, and James and John. All of them were in the fishing business. Now, the call of these men is nothing spectacular. Jesus simply puts forth the directive, "Follow me." Matthew tells us that the brothers immediately left their old life behind and followed Jesus. The seaside experience with these 4 men shows us that there is no middle ground with Christ. Whenever we encounter Jesus, a decision has to be made. Either or we don't. And that choice makes an eternal difference. But don't take my word for it. Read it for yourself.
Thank you for listening on Second Chance Ministry.